All right. As you know, I'd love to hear from some folks, maybe somebody who hasn't spoken up or contributed before. That would be great. I don't select people, I just ask you to jump on in. And just the conversation is about what about reviving Bloom's taxonomy and formally going over that with staff and starting to use those word lists and prompts as something. Anybody care to jump in? What was discussed in your group?
I'll talk. And
Thank
I'm
you.
in elementary, by the way, so we do a lot of like if we're in first grade or second grade, I kind of show the teachers you can do skip counting with little melodic songs, like 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 55, you go all the thing, hee haw. So that's the five. You use like a cowboy song. And for twos, when they start skip counting, it's like we do Jody's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. So they count back again. And in place value for upper grades, we start with, I tell them they stop where the fat lady sings in the hundreds. So they go, we got our ones, we got our tens, we got our hundreds. Don't forget about our thousands and our 10,000s and our 100,000s. And then we go, cool cat.
You have all
The next
kinds
place
of,
value. So it's just like you change the song for each family or period for the place value. And
yeah, yeah.
so, I mean, they eventually memorize it.
That's great. So that would be a great example of using some of the multiple intelligences and the different learning modalities.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad you're using some of that. It made me think of some of you maybe are almost as old as I am. There was an old pianist years ago. His name was Victor Borga, and he was a
Mm-hmm.
comedian and a pianist. And he had hand gestures and sound effects for all the punctuation marks. So a period was, and an exclamation point was a, and so he would do readings. And quotations were, and so my class would always do readings, oral readings, but they had to do sound effects and hand gestures for the punctuation marks.
Thank you for
Let's get
sharing that,
back.
ma'am.
That's
We do
cool.
fourth grade writing, so thank you.
Good, good. So let's get back to Bloom's taxonomy and these levels of thinking. How might these Bloom's verbs help you in designing instructional tasks? Could we hear from a couple of more folks, please?
I just want to add that I teach high school science,
Uh-huh.
and I've used Bloom's taxonomy in designing my what I call my pre-assessment and my post-assessment of my classroom. I use it in warm-up, and I actually put all the different levels of questions from all the way from understanding to creativity, and use that as a warm-up of a particular concept. The reason for that is I wanted to gauge student foundation or the prerequisites of that concept, and then now tailor my instructions based on the outcomes of my assessment that is designed based on Bloom's taxonomy. And then I go back at the end of the concept or at the end of the class as part of my exit strategy, or maybe end of day exam quiz. I repeat the same questions, going from the very level of remembering to the level of mastery, creativity, and I gauge. And when I see the outcome, usually I use 75% pass as a way to say, okay, this class is a little bit more successful. If I see that students are, had answered a lot of the questions that are on the high order thinking, there are more students that answered that level of questions properly, then I know that I was, most of the students reached a level of mastery. But if I see that some of my students, usually less than 75%, did not answer the question at the level of mastery, at the high order thinking, the creative side, then I kind of go back and realize that maybe that's something that has to do with my teaching. Now, what I've learned from these presentations so far is to reevaluate how I have used the multiple intelligences that was mentioned. So that means maybe the students that didn't get to the level of mastery I was looking for, maybe I could reevaluate what multiple
Come in
intelligence I
that
had
door.
used. Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah.
So I hear you saying, and it's a great idea, that we can easily put the Bloom's levels of thinking in any assessment and feedback. Too often, as you well know, we get stuck at the lowest levels of thinking here. And so if you are giving just a quiz, a vocabulary quiz, a pretty straightforward regurgitation of the information, those are the lowest forms of thinking, but kids can get high marks on it. But if we really want to know and dive in and understand about mastery and understanding, then asking questions and tasks at the higher levels of thinking will really help us understand whether kids have gotten to mastery or not. Somebody else? Anything about Bloom's taxonomy, kind of reviving that and using those verbs and those levels of thinking in designing tasks? Oh, come on now. Whoop. I lost you here. All right. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. All right. So my wish for you is that this conversation happens with teachers and it becomes revived. That's the term I'm using now. I think that a lot of us use these levels of thinking intuitively. We know those lists of verbs and all. Now, I don't have it with me because I didn't have a printer, but if you will look in that Bloom's packet, I think you'll see that after the first pages, there's an article that I put in there that is just brilliant. And I'll have you take a look at that. Someone can maybe tell me what page that starts on. It was after all of the descriptions and of Bloom. It was after this part. There was an article on using Bloom's prompts, I think it was said. Does anybody have that and could tell us what the title of it is or the page number it's on? In the Bloom's packet.
It's possibly page 3, question stems for each level of Bloom's taxonomy.
Question stems, and then is that a starting of an article of several pages?
It's very small. I don't know if that's the one you're talking about.
I thought I attached another one. She's holding it up, but
This one? Okay.
that's the pyramid.
Oh,
I'll look at it here in just a moment and double check. I thought I had another article there for you, but you know, things happen when you're in a motel room and trying to piece it all together here. So I'll look on that in just a moment. All right, so in our Techo box, we're putting the idea and understanding of multiple intelligences as one of the ingredients. Now we're putting in Bloom's taxonomy and levels of thinking as another ingredient that we can put in to help differentiate. Now we're going to go to, let's see, and we've looked at this before, the classroom instruction that works, the Marzano 9. Maybe you remember that 2 sessions ago, or maybe it was last session, I gave you a little poll to tell me about what your understanding was about Marzano's 9. And this comes from, there's 2 books. One is Classroom Instruction That Works, and this is one of the more recent ones. Is called The New Art and Science of Teaching. And remember, Marzano and his incredible team looks at all the top strategies that we use in instruction and kind of ranks them. And so the effect size you can see up there is that if it only has a 0.5, that's really just a medium impact. And certainly if it's lower than that, then it's not a very strong impact at all. So here's a list of 9 that all have some pretty good, over 50 for sure. I think all of them are over at least 0.61. And there was 3 categories. One was creating the climate for learning. And if you'll look on there, we focused a lot on cooperative learning up here. That was our focus all last time, was how important cooperative learning is as one of the key strategies. And as we look through on helping students develop understanding, there's questions, cues, and advanced organizers. That's what we spoke about just a little bit ago about priming the pump and helping kids really get a sense of what they can connect this information to. So those advanced organizers and questions that help link new learning to prior knowledge. And the one I'm going to focus on here is this non-linguistic representations. So we're going to focus on that here for just a few minutes as one of the 9. And let's read what it says here. Non-linguistic representations, a variety of methods such as graphics, models, mental pictures, drawing, and movement should be utilized to elaborate and rehearse new learning. It has an effect size of 0.73. The 27 points is supposedly, if used regularly and authentically, that you could have a 27 percentile point gain in exams. So let me just kind of share that this is something that I'm going to ask your help on, because certainly during, as we're doing distance learning, is this an asset to be thinking about this, or is this challenging? So let's look at non-linguistic representations. So it goes along with what we call dual coding theory. In our brain, we store things in at least two ways. The knowledge is stored in two forms. One is the verbal linguistic form. That's where we're actually storing words and phrases, and that goes in one part of your brain. And other things that are associated to that thing, so nonverbal, non-linguistic, stores information with pictures, images, physical sensation, and really how your body multisensory stimulation about the thing. So right now, if I asked you to close your eyes and think about a dog, most of you would be able to visualize and conjure up a dog. And now if I ask you to think about the word dog, and let's have it all written in uppercase letters. Let's have it written in a slanty italic font. Now you're using a whole other different part of your brain for the verbal linguistic part and the nonverbal. So, and if we want to really empower learners, we're going to present information in a couple of different ways so that they can do this dual coding. That's what we're looking for, dual coding. So again, sometimes we just, and again, one of the problems that happens is as kids get older and in the upper grades, we rely so much on the verbal part that we not forget, but we start thinking they don't need all the visuals or they don't need the models because they're able to understand it with words. But if you really want it to make it memorable, then you're going to be doing dual coding and having the information go in more than one way, not just in words. So non-linguistic representations are not just non-linguistic, verbal and kinesthetic. So it's not just doing non-verbal clues, it is doing movement as well. So explicitly engaging students in the creation of non-linguistic representations. It stimulates and increases activity in the brain, and Bob Marzano often says that. So anytime we can have kids make graphic representations or a physical model or generate mental, sometimes we might have them do a little guided visualization and help them see in their mind's eye what's going on in the story or in the novel. And then providing them with visual representations and media that they can see. And of course, drawing pictures and pictographs and engaging in kinesthetic activity. Just a moment ago, even though you didn't need to do that particularly, just having you do the little foldable, the little booklet, is you were encoding that in a different way. You were hearing my voice, you're writing the words, but you're creating your little booklet, and it ends up wiring the brain in a slightly different way. So there's all kinds of things that we're going to look at here of graphic organizers, kinesthetic, mental pictures, pictographs, etc. And so one of the biggest ones that we want to look at on that list here of is the idea of non-linguistic representations. I'm going to put you out in your group, and I'm going to challenge you to create something here and to share it with your group. So just have a pen and paper handy somewhere, okay? And I want you to, don't start drawing or writing anything, just listen for a moment. In fact, I'll stop screen share for just a second here, all right? So I want you to visualize an animal. Any animal at all. Just take a moment to visualize an animal. I want you to start seeing that animal in its habitat. Could be a natural habitat, could be in your home, but what are some things we might see around that animal? Okay. I want you to play around with your visualization here, and can you make the animal in your mind's eye move so that you can observe how it's moving? And it can move fast, it can move slow, it can just be moving just a tiny bit. I want you to observe the colors that you see in this image. What are some colors? All right. Textures. Can you see some textures? Are there other animals or humans around? But back to this single animal, I want you to look at the face or head of this animal. Really dial in on some features. Check out ears if it has them. Check out eyes. Is there a mouth? What does that look like? Okay. All right. We're going to just play around with this. What I'd like you to do is to take just a minute here. We're not going to breakout rooms yet. And yes, with a piece of paper, can you sketch anything you can about the animal that you are visualizing? Some of you feel pretty talented and artistic, and we'll get into more detail. For the rest of you, even if you have to draw something that looks like a little emoji or an icon or a stick figure, will you take just a moment to draw? I'm going to give you about a minute to just draw what was in your mind's eye. Sketch it out. All right, who has something to share about the pictures of the drawings, or any ahas or anything to share on that?
I kind of had an aha moment when we were talking in our group, basically just knowing like this is best practice, having students use like the Freire model for vocabulary, drawing out, they're able to make better connections, they're able to own it more. And so, we just need to do things like that more consistently and more often so that students have more chances at success with that.
Thank you. And thank you, Catherine. And the other piece on that is that even if you were a little bit embarrassed about your drawing, usually sharing in small groups, you find out that, guess what, maybe mine wasn't the worst. And you actually start to even gain some skills by looking at what others drew. Now, I just noticed in the chat that someone said that 2 people drew the same animal. 2 in our group drew the same animal. That's pretty amazing. Somebody else a comment or thought about anything that came up as we were doing a little dual encoding there? I don't know how many of you are using mind mapping, or whether that's too old for you as well, but this is where we can start making the connection between, instead of taking linear notes or writing lists, that we actually start helping kids learn how to link ideas. And believe me, they are getting so good with emojis and emoticons and all of that, that they might be able to make some little drawings and help make their note-taking come alive. So we do know that one of the other strategies there in the middle box of Marzano is summarizing and note-taking. And so I just would like to give a shout out to making sure that we are including some kind of drawing or illustration as we do any kind of note-taking, that we're putting some kind. And some of you in the upper grades may be doing interactive notebooks, almost like Cornell notes, where there's illustrations on one side or icons or a flow chart or something, and then the other side does have what would be more traditional notes of verbal, linguistic, and lists, etc. Anybody else have a quick comment for us or a question? So this is the, you have the 5 minutes here. What questions are coming up for you at this point? You're going to be asked in just, is it 2 weeks or 3 weeks, to share out some of this information. What from multiple intelligences or from Bloom's taxonomy is still fuzzy for you that you'd like a little clarification on? I'd love to hear from you if you have a question, because I don't want you to sit there and be a yeah, but. You know what a yeah, but is? Yeah, but. How
Dr.
are we
Comfort,
gonna do that? Yeah, but.
Dr. Comfort, Ms. Anadozi here. Quick question.
Yes.
I have struggled. I have a general understanding of Bloom's taxonomy, but my biggest struggle is using it with the students that are really struggling, that have learning disabilities, if you will. Can you speak more to that? Is this something to use? Is there a different tool to use for these
It's a great question. So here's what I suspect happens. Many times teachers who feel that they have an underperforming student or a student who's struggling, we tend to back up our instructional planning or tasks to those lower levels of thinking. We think, my gosh, they need to have the basics. And so let's give them tasks that are just at the remember and understanding level so that we can get them through the piece. The research continues to show that you don't always have to have foundational knowledge and understanding to begin to do creation. So, for instance, if I brought to you parts and pieces, my husband bought a little wooden patio chair to put together. It would be, it involves the use of a screwdriver and a hammer. I didn't want to have lessons on the hammer and the screwdriver and have to practice that for 2 or 3 days before I got to put the chair together. I'm going to start acquiring those skills while I'm doing the building. And what the research is saying is, don't always think that the foundational knowledge has to be mastered before you encourage students to do higher level thinking or more complex instruction. That many times, that given a complex task, it's their motivation for wanting to do that complex task. They actually start learning and acquiring those basic skills along the way. Does that kind of make sense? Is that a metaphor? So think about that next time that you're saying, oh, you have to master this before you can go ahead and do that, is that sometimes a more creative, more complex task actually brings out in kids the opportunity to, that now they see the relevancy and the need for having those very basic foundational skills. Does that help a little?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Somebody else, either a question or a comment before we break for our strategy session here. Anything about, because I don't want you to feel, uncomfortable in sharing this with your staffs. In some way, for some of us, it's a revisit and a revive. And for some of you, I know even today we heard that the multiple intelligences as such, this might be some new information for you. Any other question or thought or feedback? So right now, the 3 things that I'd include in your workshop is going to be about learning preferences, and that we're wanting kids to be attracted to and be motivated to engage, and that one of the main ways you can do that, besides getting to know them in all kinds of ways, is to maybe do some kind of a self-survey of the multiple intelligences and to start looking at what are their different learning preferences. The second thing was, let's look at terminologies that's used in Bloom's taxonomy to really look at and evaluate, are the tasks that we're giving of varying degrees of complexity, or are we kind of stuck at the lowest levels of thinking? And the joke always is that we have so much to cover that we do the very basics first, and it's like in our mind, if we have time, we're going to do a creative project. If we have time, and we never end up having time. So do we always put off some of those more complex or creative tasks if we have time? And then now, as we look at Marzano 9, one important one to implement is this dual encoding, meaning using non-linguistic representations. So kids are either drawing or looking at visuals or creating things, something that's, we're not always teaching just with words, because we have some kids that are really challenged by that. Okay, I have that it is time. It is 1:30, and my schedule shows that secondary, you're going to stay with me for another 30 minutes. Elementary, you get your 30-minute break. There'll be it'll end up being a couple of minutes over, because then at is it 2:10 that you'll come back. Well, there'll be a little passing period there, and then I'll have elementary, and then all of you join me again at 2:45 for a big finish. All right? Any questions? All right, so you can sign out and sign back in again, or you can just mute and your video and that. And I'll wait here and catch my breath and get back to screen sharing. And secondary folks, you're staying with me. Of course, if there's anyone who wants to stay for both, you are welcome to do that. All right. Now, see, it's hard for me to know how many people are here with us who are on, so I'm seeing maybe 15 or 18 or so folks here. All right. All right, thank you. So I'm going to be throwing out some sample strategies, and in a little, we call this spray and pray. I'm going to be casting them out there and praying that a few of them are helpful to you. The first thing that we need to look at is still this limited direct instruction. So I'll address that first. And then I'm going to be talking about the jigsaw activity with leveled text and the role play with raft writing models. Maybe you already know all about the raft writing model, but let's see here. So the very first thing that I always have to remind my secondary teachers of, especially now during distance learning, is teachers, we talk too much. It's not very brain friendly. And sometimes we repeat things more than once because, they don't look like they're getting it. They don't look like they're engaged. So maybe I'll say it louder and more slowly. And so we end up repeating things so much. Not only it does several things, but one thing it does is it encourages the development of what we call learned helplessness. Because what that means is that a student can just sit there and not be very engaged because they know you'll repeat it if they need it. They count on you to say it more than once and to keep talking. That keeps me from having to engage and having to learn. So I think I already did I already show you this film clip on one of our other ones? I think I did. I'm going to show just the first couple of 30 seconds or so of it.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone, the Great Depression, passed the, anyone, the tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which anyone raised or lowered, raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression. Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone seen this before? The Laffer curve. Anyone know what this says? It says that at this point on the revenue curve, you will get exactly the same amount of revenue as at this point. This is very controversial. Does anyone know what Vice President Bush called this in 1980? Anyone? Something DOO economics. Voodoo economics.
All right. So there you go. You've heard the boring economics, Ben Stein. If you just Google boring economics teacher or Ben Stein, that clip comes up over and over. Not only is he just talking in a monotone, he is drawing a few things up on the board, but he asks questions and he answers them. He doesn't even really wait for much of a pause, and the kids just know if they're compliant, they weren't engaged, they were compliant, that they won't be put on the spot. He doesn't even call on anyone out of turn. He just keeps going along. Now, I'm not suggesting that any of your teachers teach like that, and certainly in our remote instruction setup, things are a little bit different. But the research continues to show that our attention spans are much shorter than we have asked students. So even in a remote situation, we shouldn't be talking at them for longer than 10 to 12 minutes, maybe, without some kind of activity. Now, I know that I don't always even model that as well, and I'm working on it, and as all my workshops are now quite online, but that's something to consider. So the very first point in all of this was to move from lecture to more interactive learning. That's the key point of this. Moving from feeling like we are the sage on the stage. Maybe you've heard that phrase before. There's a lot of teachers that feel they're the sage on the stage, especially college professors. And what we want you to do is to move to be first a guide on the side. So how can you guide students along and ask them to give it a go, try this task, even if you don't know all the background information yet, give it a go. And what starts to evolve then is the teacher starts being the activator of learning, not just the person who's imparting the wisdom and the sage on the stage. So that's the very first thing in working with your secondary folks is when we talk about differentiated instruction, and people often say, how am I going to have time to fit that in? That's one more thing. Now I'm supposed to have them process it 3 different ways. I don't have time for that. And the very first thing is create simple, short, direct instruction. And even if not everyone has got it, go ahead and move into the task, because that's where the light bulb may come on. Okay, so the first one has to do with moving from lecture to interactive learning. The next one I want to just bring back for you, and just by show of hands, because most of you are on screen, give me a wave if you use the jigsaw strategy on a pretty regular basis. Okay, and raise your hand if you use the jigsaw, have at least used the jigsaw once or twice. Okay, so I'm going to show you a brief video clip, and then we're going to talk about some ways to use the jigsaw. This, again, on Marzano and Hattie, this strategy comes up one of the highest rankings all the time. And there are ways to do it online, especially now with Google Groups, with Zoom rooms. There's plenty of ways that this can adapt to remote instruction. So here's just a quick video.
Students are often able to understand complex or multiple text best when they can be broken down into digestible chunks. Jigsaw is an instructional strategy that allows students to share the responsibility for each other's learning by being the expert on a certain portion of an assigned text, and ultimately teaching that portion to their peers.
When I have a particularly challenging or lengthy text, or even a set of texts that I need my students to read, I will frequently use the jigsaw strategy. This strategy also works very well if I have a text that is not especially challenging, but my students and I are in a time crunch.
First, I'll put students into even-numbered groups. Next, I give each group a text that has been divided into equal parts according to the number of students in the group. Either by me assigning parts or students deciding on their own, each student in the group receives a separate section of the text to read. I'll give each group the appropriate time needed to read their text. Sometimes this can be as short as 10 minutes, but other times the time may be much longer. I also tell each student that they are tasked with becoming the expert of their assigned section of text. After this time allotted is up and each group member has read their text, I give a brief amount of time for group members to teach each other what they learned. The goal here is for students to be confident enough in their knowledge to share it with others, and also to learn connecting content from their peers.
After group members have shared with each other in their initial groups, I mix the groups. And since I assign numbers to students earlier, an easy way to do this is to ask students to form new groups by ensuring that they are with different classmates, but each number is represented within the group. This is where the jigsaw idea really makes sense. Each student expert is like a piece of a puzzle, and by forming new groups to teach each other, they are putting the pieces together. Once in their new groups, students will share their findings from their reading with their peers.
At the end of using the jigsaw strategy, see that students have really stepped into their roles as classroom leaders, both by learning from and teaching their peers. How do you see jigsaw working in your classroom? Comment on this video to share the ways you could use jigsaw in your classroom.
Great. All right. So we'll take a moment and we'll be talking about that in just a moment about a jigsaw. I'd love to hear some of your ideas and how you've used this. So you saw that there were two main ways that you could do this. One was just simply parceling out what would be a fairly simple reading so that we can get through it pretty quickly. So many times we might have a lot to cover in a chapter or something, and this way we could say, you read that and summarize, you read that and summarize, you read that and summarize. And summarization and note-taking is a huge high-impact strategy. So then we didn't read all of it ourselves. We, in fact, got to listen to someone else's summary. It puts the pressure on everyone, and they all are engaged because they have a responsibility to share back with their groups. Now, how I want to marry this with leveled text resources. So in doing this in classrooms, many times we have quite a variety of reading levels within the classroom and second language acquisition. So sometimes we'd like to do some kind of a jigsaw activity, but we're stumped a bit because, gosh, if I give the reading to everyone, and in my class you've heard about Cody, and if he can't read that piece, he's just going to fall apart and he's going to be so embarrassed that he can't share. So I really, really want to emphasize, and I know that some of you are using Newsela. Raise your hand or let me know if you have been using Newsela or are aware of Newsela. Newsela.com or Newsela. All right. So I am here. Thank you. I am here to just give a shout out. This has been such a breakthrough for teachers and so handy right now during remote instruction, because most of the articles that are on the Newsela website, and by the way, you can search anything. So if you're a biology teacher, there's going to be articles. If you are an art teacher, there's going to be articles. There's just, it's vast. It's adapted from Associated Press, BBC. There's all kinds of different feeders that are contributing to this. But the key here is that whatever article you choose, you can have it printed and available at different Lexile levels. So usually it can range from about 3rd grade to about 12th grade. So basically the same article, but at the same article is written in simpler terms. And in fact, many of them now, and if you are in a membership, if your school is, there's a lot that's just available for free, but if your school has a membership, then many of them now can be printed in Spanish as well and printed out. So there's another help to be able to engage students in the conversation. You know, I just looked up last night, for those of you that watched the inauguration, and if you haven't, I encourage you to go online and find poet Amanda Gorman. She's 22 years old, and she just read an absolutely incredible 6-minute poem. And people are just, a lot of talk is going on about Amanda Gorman. She is a name you're going to hear. But you can go online to Newsela right now, and you can get the piece. This one was at 610 Lexile level, all the way up to about a 1200 Lexile level. And now everyone in the class could be reading, and especially then if some of it needed to be translated to Spanish, and be able to do a jigsaw activity, but by using leveled reading. So we're going to have you chat about this here in just a moment. So I did give you some other lists there. There's Newsela that is there, but there is another one called newsinlevels.com. And again, if you're signed into it, that you actually can track student progress pretty easily. That one is free, and it's great to, if you don't know about Newsela, if you are signed in, you can assign all kinds of, in fact, I'm not sure if it's close by. They had prompts, writing prompts and stuff based on that Amanda one. And then there's also for the teachers that is free. So I put a couple of other ones in there. So if you haven't been using leveled text in the classroom, that is a high impact strategy for any of us. By the way, an interesting thing that I do with the leveled text is that I will print out the text in a couple of different levels and an article, and I give both levels or all three levels to students, and I ask them to compare and contrast and find out what was different about the article. What kinds of parts of speech were taken out? What kind of sentence structure was altered to go from a 1200 Lexile level to a 600 Lexile level? And it's really fascinating for kids to be able to look at what was left out. It really helps later when you go to give kids directions about, you need to put in more descriptive words, or you need to put in a transition here. And when they've seen an example of it there, they can really find it out. All right. Any quick comments then about either the Jigsaw or leveled text? I'd love to hear somebody that's been using that. And then I have one more about raft writing before we go. Anybody care to share about either having used Jigsaw or leveled text? Love to hear from a couple of people. If your name starts with an M, you should jump in there.
Doctor, your name starts with an M, Martha.
My name starts with an M. I'm just saying, if you're who Mr. Fausto, it looked like you were about ready to say something. Yes or no?
No, I was gonna call on Shannon Martinez. Martinez.
That's it. Pass it on.
She knows. Go ahead, Shannon.
Great. Oh, she's muted. There she is.
What do I know?
You're the one that taught me about Newsela and all those cool things.
Oh, yeah. We use a ton of these online resources, Newsela, Common Lit, Actively Learn, readworks.org. They're all leveled. And so it's been very helpful. Even at this point, some like the Scholastic magazines, like Action or Storyworks, they put their stories leveled in leveled readers.
Great. Once that started, I mean, that is something that technology has given us that has been just such a blessing, I think, in gathering resources for kids to read. By the way, have you had kids do their writing and then put it in on the Lexile site to see what their own writing is, what Lexile it comes up? That's a great activity. And sometimes even, is it Microsoft Word or some of the other ones will tell you Lexile as well. But that's kind of fun is you have them write it. They put it in, it turns out it's only at 700 Lexile or something, and then you give some feedback and have them come back with it beefed up, if you will, and see if they have raised the complexity level. So that's great. Somebody else on either Jigsaw or leveled text?
Miss Martinez, I just want to share that if you may please type in some of those platforms you just mentioned in the chat room.
Yes, absolutely.
Please. Thank you.
Good. That would be great for everyone to know as you do this workshop for your staff, that if you do have some, I put a few in there, but if you have some that you know have been particularly helpful for you, thanks, Shannon, that would be great. Anyone else? All right. Well, let me quick go back in the share. The other piece that I wanted to just share with you during this very brief time that we have is I wondered how many of you have used the model of raft writing. Give me a wave if you've used the raft writing model. Okay, just a handful. So let's review it really quickly. This can be used in any subject at any grade level, but it is a little formula for really inspiring some, I think, some higher level and more creative writing. So RAFT is going to stand, R stands for what role are you going to take? In other words, what's the perspective? Who is the speaker? Who is the writer? A stands for audience. So who are you writing this to, or who will be reading it? Format is this speech? Is this a report? Is this a brochure? Is this a map? What kind of format will this be delivered in? And of course, T then is the topic. What's the content supposed to be? Well, there's all kinds of things that we can start doing. So here's some examples of ways that we might do this. So we're going to read left to right here. So the role, what if and I talk about this as role playing, is what if I have to think like a trout, a fish. I'm going to be writing to myself because it's going to be a Dear Diary. That's the format that it's going to be, Dear Diary. And the topic is, how have I been experiencing the effects of acid rain? And so I have a trout writing in the diary about acid rain. My most fun one that I like to do is the bottom one here, or something like this. And that's that, what if I'm writing as an Oreo cookie? My audience is going to be the Oreos left back in the bag, right? And my job is to write a travel guide, complete with drawings, about my journey through the digestive system. So as an Oreo, I was just ingested, I was eaten, and I've gone through the system. And now I'm going to be writing a travel guide to share with the other Oreos waiting back in the bag. And so it really, now, a biology teacher who's teaching about the digestive system, this could be one task. And would that help you know whether the student understands about the digestive system? Sure thing. But it has a gimmick to it. It has a hook. It's something that's fun. It's something that's a little bit silly. And for some kids, that is going to be the hook. That's going to be the engagement for them. There's all kinds of different ones there. Is there somebody who has used the raft writing who'd be willing to share something that they've done with that? All right, then I'm putting you into your breakout rooms, and you are going to come up with some kind of a raft assignment, and it could have to do with the subject that you teach, or it could be one that you do together. But come up with some kind of a raft writing activity, role, audience, format, topic. All right, I'm putting you into your breakout rooms for just 5 minutes. We don't have much time. Let's see if we can, and I will be asking you to share. Oh, now this, it could be interesting. Let's see, I might have to redo, but some people are going to be in there. How silly, huh? Some will be in. If you find yourself just all alone, do your best.
Miss Caulfield, I moved that Miss Camarillo to room 7 since she was by herself. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I went to go find her. Great. I was looking to see who was all alone. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, as you come back, I want to hear from at least 3 people, maybe somebody whose name starts with an S. And I'd love to hear what was a raft writing idea that you came up with? What could it be? What subject would it be in? And what could it be? Anyone? Great. We have more people back, and I'm just reminding that I'm asking for a couple of people to share their idea about a raft writing activity. What could it be for role, audience, format, and topic? Asking for at least one person to share.
That time was really short, so it was like a minute long. So the person that I was with, and I can't pronounce his name, but he pretty much, I went down to have meet with my principal, so he kind of explained the whole thing to me again.
Okay.
So I just want to let you know the time was like really short, so we couldn't really plan anything.
All right.
But we did mention, both of us mentioned that this is an easy concept that all teachers can possibly use in their classroom.
Yes. Thank you. And my apologies. There was a little bit of a glitch in getting people off into their rooms, and I may have cut you off too short. So thanks for that feedback.
Oh, Shannon had a really good one.
Yeah.
She was, I was like, I had caught the tail end and she was like, will it be,
So like a rational number, and their audience would be like, maybe it could be themselves, like they could be our diary, and they could talk about a day in the life of a rational number, so they can see how rational numbers are being used.
There you go.
I like that. I was like, oh, I can
love it.
Totally incorporate writing.
Really, the creativity on it's such a simple model, and that's what I just want to impart to you. And once kids get the idea of a raft as the formula, they can come up with some as well. And sometimes it's fun to do it as choices, so you can choose from this list who you want to be, choose who your audience is, choose what your format is, but the topic is assigned. So you could say, but it has to be about this content. So some choice involved would be great. One more person to share or no? All right, so the 3 ideas here, I have to get back to my, my screen, is that I'm encouraging you, certainly the raft writing activity, but more and more, or let's start first with less direct instruction. We have to start with less direct instruction and break that up with interactions. We're going to try and do perhaps more a jigsaw activity. Again, it's a simple formula and can be done many times in a variety of different ways. Diving in more to leveled text resources if you have them available. I'm particularly challenging you to take a look at poet Amanda Gorman's article and see if that can be used in some way in your classroom. And then the idea of raft writing, again, as a formula that can be used across all subject areas. All right? Okay, you're going to go for about a half an hour break. It ends up being about 35 minutes or so, and I'll work with the elementary folks, and I so appreciate you on. And you can just mute and do the video, or you can sign out and sign back in again. All right? Pat yourself on the back. Thank you. See you in a few minutes. All right. If you'll just turn on your camera for a moment so I know if you're back and with us, that would be great. Just a little check-in. See a smiling face or a smiling mask, as it may be. Thanks so much. All right, those of you that serve mostly elementary, I have a couple of interesting things to share with you in our next half hour here. So one I think you're very familiar with, and the other one about immersion days, maybe something that you can look forward to putting together sometime soon. So the very first one that I focused on that is one of the highly rated activities for differentiated instruction is the use of centers and rotation stations. Now you can just give me a wave. My suspicion is that many of you are doing this already, and you have workshops or center rotations or things like that. In general, when we talk about centers or rotation stations, students are rotating through several stations during a lesson block. And you might teach a lesson to small groups, and students might be rotating through to your reading area or your instructional table. And that in between times there may be some OYO, which is on your own, or some small group practice. So rotation stations, a pretty general kind of idea for this, and maybe this is what you already do, is that there'll always be a teacher station. Now, again, we're going to talk about now how do we do this in a remote classroom. So before you be in a yeah, but let's look here. That's what our conversation is going to be about. The teacher station. And then there should be some station that is, yes, you go and sit there, but perhaps it's more independent. It's a practice activity or a multiple rehearsal, but it's on your own, an OYO activity. And there's another station would have a practice activity, but that one has some collaboration so that when you're at that group, you can talk and share and work on things together. And then usually these days we have maybe a station that has more technology involved and that you're rotating to the laptops or the pads or something like that. Okay, so that would be a general format for a rotation station. There's all kinds of schedules that again in an in-person classroom. And we're going to be discussing here about how you have already seen and what are some suggestions for how we could still do this in a remote setting or when we have roomies and Zoomies all together. I'm anxious to hear. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I am going to put you in breakout groups because I'd like you in small groups to discuss. I'll give you about 5 or 6 minutes here. How are you and what have you observed? How are you able to do any kind of rotation or small group work or workshop group during this hybrid schedule? Okay, so any questions about that? It's a general question. I have just a couple of more slides to, I was the teacher at Monarch Community School. I had 6 groups, but really they were 3 main groups. There was the Sea group, the Earth group, the Sky group. And so within Sky group, it was divided 4 and 4 so that I had some flexibility. I had interesting rotations. My stations were always a computer station, spelling vocabulary station, a choice center. So in there would be something on your own where you could choose, the writing workshop, and then of course meeting with me and guided reading. All right. So I'm going to put you into a breakout rooms for just, like I said, 5 minutes or so. And I'd like the discussion to be about how can we still implement this strategy with integrity and hopefully a management system that works, that we still might be able to do some kind of rotation stations. Okay, so I'm going to put you into groups here, and let's have that discussion for a little bit, and I'll try to be sensitive to how that you're there for just 5 minutes or so. Okay. All right.
Yes, M plus, M plus. Oops.
Welcome back. I jumped in a few of the rooms, and I'm just tickled to death that so many of you then gave feedback that you've done some work in this area, both in some training, it sounded like, some PD work or PLC work, and that there's been some implementation. So I apologize if I was encouraging you to do something that you're already doing and rocking and rolling. Good job.
No, they don't have to. It's just first grade. Yeah, because they're tied to the dyslexia.
Somebody's talking there. Who is that? Oh, mute. Yep. So the trickiness comes that most teachers are having is with, if you have the hybrid schedule and you have, we call them roomies and zoomies or roomers and zoomers, is that how are you orchestrating them to participate in any kind of center or workshop rotation? Is there one or two people who could share with whole group here about how that's working for you? Most, or two people I spoke to said that they were using Zoom as the main way to do that. Anybody care to share something that's working for you? I'm happy to hear about it. I bet there's some people that still don't have it down and would love to hear something that's been successful for you.
Our lower house kiddos have been successful with both using Zoom and kind of a menu board of centers that they could try to do at home and then report back with some accountability as to what they did. That's been successful. They use both together. So when appropriate, they'll use the Zoom rooms and that's working out. And then what they're able to do on their own with the materials they have at home. So
great. Thank you, Catherine. Anybody else? One more person, something about how you're doing rotations or centers or workshop in a hybrid situation? If it's working?
We have in our lower house the same. It's like kinder first and second, and it's working good because the teachers kind of have figured out using the Zoom platform as well, doing breakout rooms, but having a kid that is in the classroom with the kids that are online at home, because they're real quick to rat each other out. Hey, someone's not doing their work, or they left, and
right.
So the teacher can go into that breakout room and say, hey, get to work or whatever. But that was one of the key things, is having someone in the room in that group at home so they can be the monitor, or the teacher can still hear what's going on.
And they're just on their tablet or Chromebook or something, but participating in the group. Excellent. So I hadn't thought about just a classroom monitor to help with that. That's brilliant. Thank you. Someone else? All right. Well, I have something I want to share with you, and I understand that it is not adapted for remote learning yet. So if you'll stick with me, it's just a strategy that I've been using for many years, and I'd like to introduce it to you. And try not to be a yeah, but. I guess, let's see, I wanted to finish the, just that I do a lot of must-dos and may-dos. I know you probably already do this, that some of the stations are non-negotiable. Some might be actually assigned by the teacher where you need to do this particular one, but that some of the stations were their own choice, right? All right. So here's what I want to share with you. It's something called giant step interventions. And it's also referred to as intensive immersion or concept days to accelerate learning. So let me tell you what the background is on this. And I started doing this now 35 years ago. And here's how it started. Is I was teaching a 4th, 5th grade combination class, and I was just so dismayed. Of course, as a teacher, I was only, 8 years old, I guess, 35 years ago. But I was so dismayed that my students were just having such a difficult time. I'm going to go back to that. In this case, it was with long division. I was teaching long division, concept and computation of extended division. And I just was teaching it and reteaching it, and I was trying to do some differentiation, although I was, pretty rookie teacher. And it just seemed like it was taking forever. And so this slide is going to keep wanting to go forward here. So what happened is I decided to look into what would be a better way for students to maybe gain all these skills. And so we know that students often move up grade levels without mastery of certain skills and concepts. And we know that Common Core standards have increased rigor. And so I was looking for an intervention that would help students make huge progress in a short amount of time. And so by using these brain-friendly strategies and best practices, I decided to create an immersion day. And here's what an immersion day was. I decided to teach long division in one day. I decided to use all my best practices, all my best strategies, all my differentiated instruction, and see if I could do an intensive intervention. Because it seemed like I was just repeating it over and over, and it seemed like we'd go through it in class, and kids would get that little light bulb kind of coming on over their head, and then the weekend would happen, and we'd come back on Monday, and I don't remember that you were saying that, right? And so I decided to do what I called Division Day. And we ended up, the next year, we ended up videotaping it. And I'm going to show you a little excerpt from this videotape. It takes about 7 minutes. And the first thing I want to tell you is it's old. It's actually on old VHS tape, right? But it did in 1987, it won the best teacher training film in the nation. So from the National Education Film and Video Association. So stick with me here, and what I want you to notice is all the differentiation. We'll talk about it afterwards. Yes, I'm so young.
The theme for the day was I Can Divide and Conquer. All activities during the day related in some way to the division concept. Orchestrating learning is the most important job that teachers do. I had little trouble recruiting parents, student teachers, learning assistants, and community members to include them in the game plan for the day. Many parents were somewhat hesitant about teaching division. I knew I would have to provide some additional training for them in order to help them feel like division experts when it came time to lead a small group.
Our divisor is 6, and these are Skittles, and this stands for 1.
I've been working in Martha's class for about 3 months. I'm going to UCSC, and this is my first education class, and so I was lucky enough to get Martha as my teacher, and she was telling me about Division Day, and it's a great experience for me because I can see all these different ways to teach a subject that I hate. I mean, and I've learned a lot about it just today being in this class.
Oh, really? So you have learned as well as the children
right,
did.
Definitely.
With a working knowledge of brain research and how it relates to learning, I knew the main thrust for the day would be providing patterns. Since we know the brain is a pattern-seeking device, I wanted to provide a wide variety of patterns that address the different modalities.
Round off to the nearest pin. $285.
By limiting the direct instruction time to only 15 minutes an hour, the kids were able to participate in the learning process as much as possible.
Have a good day. We'll see you this afternoon.
Jennifer, how are you doing? Besides providing a positive physical and emotional environment, I knew it would be important to incorporate cooperative learning experiences. When I made up the groups, I tried to make sure each person had at least one of their special friends with them. I also grouped students so that there were experienced division students mixed in with students who were just beginning.
that's the only way I think I would want to be in the education system now, is to have small groups, you know, to be able to get around to every group. Because I was talking to Ben, who's fourth grade, and this is the first day he's been exposed to this, and it's amazing he's catching it the first day, and it was just because we had that, you know, individual interaction that I think is the reason he caught it.
If I was going to handle 50 fourth, fifth, and sixth grade students, I needed a larger room. I negotiated the use of our multi-purpose room and media center for the whole day. The set change alone made the day seem more special to the students and to me.
I like being together and having balloons and everything. A lot of different stations, and they're decorating it, so it's not just playing and stuff.
The students weren't going to be going out to recess as usual, so I made sure that some snacks were available throughout the morning. Students were allowed to go and help themselves when they felt a little hungry. They also had permission to use the restrooms whenever they needed. Several students commented on how they felt trusted and grown up by having to be responsible for themselves.
What is this thing over here that we put in, Lisa? Good, a divisor. So you need to know how many kids came to the door. I'm going to show you how many kids came to the door this time.
Creating a wide variety of stations to work at was one of the most challenging tasks. By drawing on a variety of resources, I was able to complete the job. Student teachers from the university were encouraged to participate. Several made up their own stations as part of their assignments. Each station consisted of only one problem. This real-world problem was demonstrated by a set of manipulatives selected for that particular problem. A few stations used sets of Montessori golden beads. The students really enjoyed working with the concrete objects. Too often, by the third grade, we have put away the toys and games used to teach math.
Do you like working like this?
Yeah, this is fun.
Okay, why? How is it different from regular math?
Because you get to do, like, games. You don't just have to do the problem. You can, like, you have to do something first.
3, 4. Down, look around. Are you at the end? Begin. First you have to...
One of the most exciting parts of the day were the creative arts choices in the afternoon. The students chose which activity they preferred, art, music, or drama.
No, dear, put on your glasses. You look better.
Like the movement that they're doing and the playing, the singing, excellent. I think, and especially the drama that they're doing, I think it just sticks. It's just such a nice way. And when you go into classrooms today, you just see a lot of, you know, workbooks and dittos, and it's just so boring. I mean, I'm bored as an adult. I know kids are bored, and so I know that they have to do it in different ways.
Do you think by the end of today, kids will be able to walk out here and say, I can divide and conquer?
I know they will. I know a lot of them will.
I knew that the environment was brain compatible. I knew that I had loving, enthusiastic adult leaders. But to put the whole project into action, we needed to organize and create all the extras that would make the day a success. We put together a passport that would serve as the students' record book and journal for the day.
So when we opened our box, there was our passport, and like the day before, Mrs. Koppel had taken our picture, and so our picture's in there. And then this is the program for the day.
The leaders wrote positive comments in the booklet relating to the activity and added a stamp or sticker to show that the student had completed that task.
We have to divide.
That's right. So we're going to divide.
698. Or 609.
Okay, and how many sixes are there in 9?
1.
Throughout the day, the leaders and I continued to look for students who were having difficulties. Many students hesitate to ask for help. We didn't want anyone to feel lost. By monitoring their progress all day, we were able to provide assistance as needed.
In terms of how you regularly get mathematics, do you think this would be a good way to learn math on a regular basis? Why?
There's more help, and they have more teachers that teach you more.
As the final reward, students receive certificates and badges at the end of the day.
All right. So now, without saying anything, I'd like you to write down one question that came to your mind as you were watching that. What was one question, either about it, about putting it together, about what else you could do, whatever it is. What's one question that comes to mind after seeing that clip? Write it down. So a good strategy to get engagement is, instead of me continuing to talk, why don't I answer your questions? So please raise your hand or wave here. And what's one of the questions that came up as you saw that, that clip? Great, Catherine, great, go for it.
Okay, so I have 3. So you want me to just choose one?
Yeah, choose one and
Okay.
we'll see if there's a follow-up. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the first question that would make sense to ask would be, how long did it take you to orchestrate everything from the very beginning? Because you had to get everyone together, you had to train the student teachers and the parents. I mean, all of the materials, everything. So realistically.
Yep. Yeah, no, fair question. And without going into too many details, I'll just give you some quick feedback on that. The first time was a lot because I was doing research as to what types of activities I should include. And I was a single teacher. I hadn't roped anybody else into helping me. I didn't have a PLC that I was working with. A couple of the other 4th grade teachers said, oh, we'd like to send kids to you, but we're really not that interested. Sounds like a lot of after school work. I'll tell you, my biggest resource was I went to the math methods course teacher at the university in our town, and I got student teachers who were taking their math methods course, and he allowed them to get credit by designing a center. So their whole project was they designed the curriculum for it, or the problem. They gathered the materials and they had to present it on that day and then write it up. And that was a course assignment for them. So that was a big breakthrough. The big thing to know is that, and actually I did have 2 other teachers who were at other campuses who had who took a sub day, a professional day, to come and work with me. Once these things were put together, and these kits and centers were put together, oh my gosh, it was repeated year after year. I have some schools here in the United States that have been doing it for years, because once it was orchestrated and resourced, it was something that could be kept. So that's one question. Let's have somebody else answer or ask a question, and then we'll come back to you, Catherine. I know you have a couple of more. Who else has a question? Go ahead and jump in. I know you all wrote one down.
I know one of them was posted in the chat, but it was kind of my same question. Was there a pre-assessment and then a post-assessment, or was there passport what you were collecting as they were getting that problem throughout?
The whole video, which runs about an hour, does lead you through that there was a pre-assessment and a post-assessment. I can't quote all the gains just right at the moment, but huge gains. And that stuck, that continued over time. It wasn't just the next day. One of the things that the university mathematicians and math professors said that I thought was interesting, on the first time I did it, I did not include feedback about your feelings or about your joy or about what it was like. I was just simply going with, do you know how to do the concept and skill of long division, right? And he said, you're missing out on something here. So he said, if nothing else, even if the kids didn't master long division on that day, if they then reported about how much fun it was, they never thought math could be that fun, that they loved it, can we do this again, all of that, he said, that's what you really need to hang on to as well. So yes, we did pre and post based on just mostly computational. piece. And then in the later years, we also did feelings and, what you liked about it. Great. Somebody else?
I have another one if nobody else has one.
Sure, go for it.
Okay. Of what you found on your research, a lot of it was small group and then using manipulatives and doing that. Was there other things that you found as you were doing the research that you're like, oh, that worked?
Two things. One is get the Montessori training on teaching math. Montessori strategies, hands down, and some of those manipulatives that you saw were the Montessori they're called golden beads, they're yellow glass beads. But strategies for teaching from Montessori was a great thing. The other thing was thinking outside the box into these creative art stations. So the kids were doing an art project that had to do with division. They learned a song about division. They learned a hand jive, divide, multiply, subtract, bring it down, all those little gimmicks. And we really hooked in a lot of kids who we might not have hooked in.
Martha, what was your biggest obstacle?
I'm going to say it the first couple of times I did it, the biggest obstacle was the other teachers on the campus. And I'm going to be really honest with you. I had one go and report to my principal that she thought it was awful that her class didn't get book checkout time on that day because I had booked the library for the whole day. So I thought that was interesting. Now, in the later years, they kind of got on board. But at first, it was like, that looks like a whole lot of work. We don't want to do it. And then we're even going to put a little stick in the spoke and make it be that, they didn't like that their kids, we stayed a little bit after the regular school bell, and all the kids then went back into their classrooms and said, how come we didn't get to do that? So I'm being really honest with you. There was a little bit of that happened. The obstacle certainly is orchestration of all of that, but I'm going to back up and get back on the slides here because I want to share with you something. What happened is that as soon as I did the division day, then people came to me and said, well, can we do multiplication day, right? If you can do that with division, can we do math facts? Well, if we know about how memory takes place, you can't do that in one day. They were talking about just math fact mastery. And so we created then Math Fact Mastery Week. It's actually 4 days in a week. And we created an immersion where every morning for 4 days, we started working on fact families. And that has been super successful as well. So how many times do you have then these kids that just seem to go through the years and still not master their math facts? Wouldn't it be interesting to do one of these intensive immersions? So here's some of the reasons why it works. I know our time is limited here. I think we have the other group coming back. Certainly the one obstacle at the beginning was setting up and gathering the resources and all of that. So why would you even think about doing this? Well, if there's a large number of students who are struggling with a particular skill or concept that has been previously taught, or sometimes when the Common Core first came out, sometimes standards are moved from one grade level to another and there's a little gap. And one of the reasons that I'm sharing this with you now is that I believe that Giant Step Immersion could be an answer for us when we come back from hybrid teaching. When we talk about how are we going to mind the gap, we're going to see some gaps. There's no question. We can't wring our hands over it. It is going to happen. There's going to be some gaps. And wouldn't it be interesting to get together with some grade level teachers or your PLC and say, what if we did an intensive immersion? So since then, I've done, division days. I've done fact family weeks, all kinds of other concept days. I've done, let's see, I think I have a list here. We've done punctuation, get the point. We've done fractions, let's all go to pieces. Math facts, master your demons. It's about time, spelling demons. and graphing data, show what you know. So we take a skill, and if you, with your colleagues, find out that there's quite a few others that are challenged with that, then wouldn't it be something to put together an intensive immersion? So I'm not suggesting that you have to do it. What I am wanting you to see is that in that video clip, did you see a lot of differentiated instruction? Look at all those different things. Now you can spread those out over days, and that's fine. But what we did is we said, let's put the best of what we know works and orchestrate it so that there's some direct instruction, then center rotation, then back to learn a song, and then the kids were exhausted at the end of the day, but my God, they really, really had a breakthrough in long division. In fact, some of those same kids still come back and talk to me about it. We also ended up doing fraction day with that same group. We did fraction day as well. Any other last quick questions about that or observations? So even if you didn't do it, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's me again. But I think that even though, like you said, it's an old recording, it's so relevant right now.
Right.
You know, we're still talking about small group. We're still talking about differentiation. We're still talking about, you know, like you said, multiple intelligence. So it's still relevant.
Right. In fact, if you'll notice on that video, I didn't even mention multiple intelligences because they hadn't even been invented yet. How about that? The Frames of Mind book hadn't come out yet. So we were still talking modalities and learning styles to the degree that we could. But thanks for acknowledging that the video still has some timelessness to it for sure. Anybody else? All right, here we go. A quick 5-minute or 3-minute stretch or something, right? Am I on time here? Am I following the schedule okay? I have that about 2:45. We're back to do this big finish, yes? See, I look on my clock and it's not 2:45, but I'll figure it out. All right, as we wait for people to come back, I just wanted to ask if any of you have ever used the Heads Up game that is an app from Ellen DeGeneres. Do any of you know the Heads Up game? It sure is a great one to practice vocabulary. You know, you can, for 99 cents, you can buy a deck that's called Make Your Own, so that you can make your own. So right now, and there are ways to play this online, here's how it goes. This category is called fictional characters, and if I play it, I'm going to put this up on my head. I won't be able to see it. I'm not going to see my my picture up here, and I want you to shout out some words to see if you can help me guess this one. So here we go. It says place on forehead. Get ready. All right. I'm not going to look on my screen, but now I need somebody to tell me what's this word?
Friends. Monica's husband.
Oh, is that, Monica's husband. That's Schwimmer, that guy? Oh, somebody else give me a hint that sounds like I may not know his friends that well.
It sounds like chandelier, but it's not.
Oh, Chandler. Thank you. Good one. All right. So I go down like this and it goes on to the next one.
Ooh.
Creepy family.
I don't know that person.
Mother of Wednesday.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's Morticia on the Addams Family. Oh, good. And you go down, it switches out.
Oh.
The singer.
Singer?
No. That sounds like a month, but it's a movie.
Sounds like a month?
Sounds like a month, but it's a movie.
Oh, it's January, February, March, up, and it is done. Time's up. Anyway, if you haven't explored with, it's called Heads Up. It's an app you can download. I think it's 99 cents. And there are other ones that are free that are just called charades. But they all go, and there's all kinds of categories there. But what I encourage teachers to do is to buy the one that's called 99 cents, that's called Build Your Own Deck. And then I put the vocabulary words in there. And what I've been using is, maybe some of you have this, I have some old iPads or old phones that don't work as phones anymore, but they can be used for this. So as long as it can still download something, you can put the program in there and have some good vocabulary work. All right? Okay, everybody back? All right, this is the speed round. Are you ready for the speed round, end of day? And what I'm going to ask you to do is keep jotting down. I'd love to a count here of how many different strategies we are going to be discussing along the way here. And the idea of all of these strategies is because we know that kids need to have multiple rehearsals. Multiple rehearsals is our key. So here we go. When we talk about differentiation, we know that students should have multiple experiences for how they take in information, how they're receiving the information. We also know that they need time to actively process the information. We know that then they need to have some time or opportunities to try to make sense of it, to find out what it's connected to. We talked earlier about that coupling or making sense of it, having an aha. And then we want to make sure that students have a chance to demonstrate their understanding, and maybe not just with a test, but maybe through products and performances. All right, here's your task. If we were doing this in one of my workshop sessions, I'd have you meet in small groups, and every blue word there or phrase, I want you to create a hand gesture for. This is a pantomime, a hand gesture for it. So what would we do for take in? We can all agree on it, or you can all show me right now. What would be a hand gesture that you could do that represents take in, like take in information? Okay, so I'm seeing some grabbing, everyone, full participation. Somebody take in one hand, two hands, maybe something like that. Excellent. All right, how about to actively process? What could be a hand gesture that means process? Oh, here's one that's kind of going like that. Somebody else? Process. All right, something in your head. We have to watch out for this one. That one might not mean the same thing, but something about wheels turning or things going on in your brain to process it. What's the hand gesture going to be for to make sense of a new idea? To have the aha, if you will. What's a hand gesture for to make sense? So it could be aha, right? Some people do a bing, like a light bulb going on over their head, right? And what would be a good hand gesture for to demonstrate their understanding? What do you do to demonstrate? Kind of a ta-da, maybe. Yeah, here it is. All right, let's do all four of them. Full participation. You make it up however you want. So students should have experiences to take in information, to actively process the information, to make sense of it, bing, and to demonstrate there. All right? And now I ask you, can you remember what are the four things that students need to be able to have opportunities to do? You can do it with gestures or you can jot it down. Can you remember them? Sometimes doing the gesture will help remind you. Okay, double check that you got it. Take in information, process information, make sense of it, and demonstrate. So I know that's a kind of a silly example, but that's exactly what needs to happen in any grade level class, and that is sometimes put together a little hand gesture, appropriate for here at school. We always have to remind some of the older kids. But a hand gesture or a pantomime or a rhyme or a rhythm of something to help them remember something, a little mnemonic device. All right. So I mentioned earlier today, and I'm just drawing your attention to this as well, you have one packet that is an instructional variety. It might say top 10 strategies for differentiating instruction. Lots of ideas in there. That's what I do in some of my workshops, but I just decided to give you the whole darn thing. It's up to you whether you want to provide all of that to your teachers or whether it becomes more confusing. It might be too much information. There's several things that we didn't address today, but we're going to look at a few more of these to talk about instructional variety. Remember, we're always talking about motivation and what attracts you. So here's some Halloween candies there. And I just wonder, you can put it in the chat box. What are you attracted to? Of that page, what would you choose? What is your choice in that page? Be interested in seeing or hearing. I guess my chat box has gone away here. There we go. If that's coffee, I agree. It could be hot cider, I'm not sure. All right, so here's the thing we're going to do. On your supplemental packet, and I forget, I didn't put what page it is, I have something there called a plus, minus, and interesting, a PMI. It has 4 quadrants in it on your page. This one just has 3. Don't worry finding it right now. What I'd like you to do is on your piece of paper, on your notes, can you make 3 columns and title them these 3 of plus, meaning positive, minus, meaning negative, and interesting is, I wonder. It could be good, it could be bad, I don't know. And I'm going to show you a film clip of, again, it's a little bit dated film clip, but it does run the test of time. This is Kay Tolliver. Some of you may have heard of Kay Tolliver. She was a Teacher of the Year for many, many years. Again, no question that the video clips are dated, but I think you'll see that this is a pretty phenomenal teacher. Now, word of warning, this is taken over several days, maybe even several weeks. She bless you. She doesn't do this. She doesn't do this every day, all day long. But she is a 7th grade algebra teacher. And what I'd like you to do is to think about, as you watch this, jot some things down. What are some really positive things that you notice? And you can just put 1 word or so in there. Or what's a negative that you noticed? Is there something that's not great about it? Or what's something that's kind of interesting that makes you kind of go, well, that could go this way or that way. All right, so this is Kay Tolliver, and just take a look at the kinds of things she's doing and what her students say about it.
In cutting.
She makes the class want to learn math.
I'm going to cut right through the center. What do you think is going to happen if I keep cutting around?
You might make 4 circles.
Maybe.
And it's gonna break.
Okay, maybe.
I think it's gonna make 1 big circle.
Maybe. Any more ideas? I'm going around. And I'm going around. Francis?
Probably make a figure that has straight sides.
You think so? Let's see. And what's in a name? That what we call a circle can be changed into a square. And you'll be surprised how, though they're in junior high school, they have fun and they learn with what you might consider a rather simple activity. On your desk, you're going to find a box of raisins. Each table will get a pentomino set. I brought some sample clothes today for you. And then we're going to have a little building contest. You're going to use straws. I'm going to share with you some of the ooblex.
Ooblex. Nobody knew what was going on or nothing. Everybody thought she was crazy.
Who can make the tallest structure that will not fall? These 12 pieces can be put together to make a rectangle. Take a guess as to how many raisins you think are in the box. How many different outfits will I be able to wear? Don't open the box. Whatever you do, you can touch, you can feel, you can squeeze, you can smell. But whatever you do, don't put ooblex in your mouth.
It's fun for us because we get to work on things.
The countdown will begin. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to tell you how much time you're going to have.
She wants you to learn. She doesn't want you to just sit in class, come to school for no reason and all of that.
Go! It's a way to get students to sort of wake up and not be fearful about algebra. And then they find that it's fun. Get in here! Get some Tashaya! Have some legs! And that's basically what I'm trying to do in the math classroom, to get the kids to explore and discover on their own without being told everything.
See, we had it. You messed up.
Does this look like a rectangle?
No, it looks like a square. I like usually working in groups. I like to compete against other kids. He knows how to put it together.
Is that a good way to work as a team? No. I mean, I said that you want teamwork. And they learn from one another when they work in the groups.
Leave this right here. You see? You leave them together. You know, where's this gonna go? Yeah, trust me.
Have you two come to some agreement yet? Because you act like two old married people.
If you work together, you put your minds together, you come up with a better answer.
She makes us find it for ourselves. She don't tell us the answer.
What do you mean you can't do it?
I can't do it.
Why not?
If you do something wrong, she doesn't scream at you. She helps you with it. She don't embarrass you in front of everybody. You can keep trying, and she won't put you down.
I try and I fail, so I try.
Oh, no. That's a word we don't know here. So if at once you don't succeed, you gotta try again. And
all right, that's Kay Tolliver, Kay Tolliver. And she's been around a lot of years, and she's, in my opinion, very inspirational. So I'm going to put you into breakout groups, and I'd like you to bring your PMI, your plus, minus, and interesting. And again, try to refrain from being a yeah, but. A yeah, but, remember, is always being the Debbie Downer, if you will, or deciding why it won't work. Yeah, but. She doesn't know our kids are yeah, but. So try not to be a yeah, but. And let's see here if I can get this. I'm sorry, the breakout rooms. I'll give you about 5 minutes. And I'd like you to really recall even the little things that you noticed, things that the kids said, or little strategies that you saw worked. That was certainly over several days, but give it a go. So hopefully you've jotted a few things down, and I'll check back in with you in about 5 minutes. Thank you. All right, so just a couple of things in whole group sharing out. So can someone tell us, 2 or 3 people tell us, what were some definite pluses that you saw? Just definite pluses. Go ahead, you don't need to raise your hand, just unmute and tell us. What's something we might put in the plus side?
Just the student center activities. They were just really student centered.
They were. Thank you. Somebody else? Another plus? A positive?
All the pieces that she brought in, like not just your normal manipulatives, like she had clothes and raisins and just different things, just things that they don't always see.
Right. And that the kids would, in that case, a box of raisins really became a whole, I think she did that for proportion. I'm not sure, but yeah. And a lot of the things are really easily accessible materials as well. One more on the plus side.
She addressed in a very, friendly way the safety concerns when she said,
right.
Whatever you do, make sure you don't put it in your mouth. And she had this phrase into it that made it fun,
right,
and easy to understand.
Good. Good.
And of course, she had lots of hands-on check-ins, collaborative environment. All those are positives. And modeling too. So.
That's right. Thank you. And what were some minuses? Obviously, one that's going to come up is the amount of time to prepare and gather and resource. But what were some of the other things that you saw that, I'm not sure about that? Is there anybody who had a minus they might want to share? And what do you think about the idea of doing oobleck, as an example, the cornstarch and water oobleck, in an algebra class? Does she have to make a direct connection, or does it serve another purpose?
It forces the students to make a connection.
Right.
I'm just laughing because I just read the chat from Mr. Frosto. He said none of the students were wearing masks, which indeed was an interesting fact.
Doing social distancing. That's great.
Correct. And that came up in our group. Yes, indeed. How can this translate into the real world of today?
Right.
So that's one of the interesting parts.
And certainly then I tell you that I understand that part, and the group part couldn't work. But many teachers are preparing materials that can be picked up and sent home, or asking for very simple things. As I said, oobleck is made of cornstarch and water, and with different ratios of cornstarch to water, you create some different things. And so it might be interesting to see how it could be related. Anybody else? What about interesting?
I think that from the video, I would have liked to, because we saw the glimpse of the greatness, right? But her different outfits too. So we all know that stuff happens in between those outfits. Like stuff gets real, like an actual classroom. And I would have liked to see what she did to that. Like, how did she respond to it? What was her bringbacks for how to get the kids back on task? Because that glue and everything else was around that room and everywhere else. So there has to be like redirection that was made that we never got to see. And I would have liked to see that.
Good.
Like the real world.
Fair enough. And the only thing that you can see from that is that the students respected her. They liked her. They were inspired to try new things. And so remember that if one of her big goals was to help create a growth mindset, that was one part of it. But I appreciate that film clip. One of the things, and most of you already know this, one of the reasons I show a lot of older video clips, the elementary group saw one of my real old video clips, is that it is more and more challenging to be able to get into classrooms and film, to be able to show others. Getting video releases, especially with social media, there's so many schools and teachers and families that don't want us to film. So fortunately, Edutopia and a few others have gotten into classrooms a lot, but it is challenging to get into classrooms and be able to get all of that. All right. So certainly multiple rehearsals, engaging tasks distributed over time. I had maybe put this up one other time before for you, that the research from Marzano and others show that some learners may need up to 24 practices to get to 80% mastery. Let that sink in a minute. That not just to do it one time, to do it two times, to do a third time, but some may need 24 practices. Remember, we're re-stimulating those initial connections in the neurons and dendrites. And then you have some kids that seems like they see it once and boom, they've got it. So this is where we talk about differentiation. There's some kids that need a lot more rehearsal and spaced practice. All right, so here I told you I was just going to throw out some ideas for you here. That again, we're trying to get kids' attention and get them motivated. So I do try to use quite a few manipulatives and gimmicks. So here are my 3 top ones that I use, all things that can be purchased at a dollar store should you not have them available. These little mini sacks are, I get them 3 for $1 at dollar store. And again, we're going to have to rethink this on touching and sharing objects. So I get that, but stick with me here as we talk about what the premise of this is. We're comparing 2 things. So in the sack, on one of them, let me move forward to the sack here. Let me see where it is. Here it is. In one sack, I have different topics listed. Skateboarding. This was our local boardwalk or amusement park. So there's different topics in one sack. And in another sack, there's these 4 sentence types. So a strip that has interrogative, exclamatory, declarative, or imperative. And so the student, when the two SACs come to them, they draw out one topic and they draw out a type of sentence, and they have to come up with a sentence using in that sentence format and using the correct intonation in their voice, etc., for what the punctuation mark would have determined. So we're going to play it here for just a moment. And here's how it goes. If we were in the class and in person, we'd work in groups of 3, 4, or 5, but we can do this in even a Zoom situation. One person at a time draws a sentence strip from the bag, and you're going to use the word or phrase up on the screen to create a correct sentence. So use the inflection in your voice, and if you're correct, we'll all give you a thumbs up. So the way we'll do it today, make sure you know what the 4 are. Actually, I put them on each of the slides here. So here's, I'll put one up here. So here's a hamburger. Raise your hand if you could use the word hamburger in an interrogative sentence. Quick, let's do this. Elena, go, unmute. And remember how your voice should go at the end of an interrogative.
Do you want to eat a hamburger?
Hamburger, there you go. Give her a thumbs up. Nice going. Who would do either exclamatory, declarative, or imperative? Your choice. I can't see you all, so just unmute and go for it. You can choose 2, 3, or 4. Still about hamburger. Exclamatory would end with an exclamation point. Declarative ends with a period. It's factual. And imperative is a command, often starting with a process verb.
This hamburger is amazing.
Exclamation point. This hamburger is amazing. One more, either declarative or imperative.
Bring me a hamburger now.
Bring me a hamburger now. Great. Let's do one more just to get the hang of it. Planet Jupiter. You choose. Who would do one of those 3 or 4 sentence types? Which one? You don't even have to tell us which one it is. Just do it and we'll know. Is it the participation piece or the Jupiter piece that's stumping you here?
Jupiter is the greatest.
Jupiter. And if you said it as an exclamation point, what would it sound like then?
Jupiter is the greatest.
Is the greatest. There we go. Otherwise, declarative, it might have been. So one other person. One more.
Does Jupiter have moons?
Does Jupiter have moons? And I really work with kids on hearing how their voice changes when they do the different sentence types. All right. So I've put all kinds of things, but that is something that you can do in even in a remote classroom of just a way to practice it. Remember, some kids might need 24 practices. I do a lot with dice, and let's see if I have my honor. Here it is, on a roll. So I create 6 questions or prompts, and the kids have a single die, and they have to roll the die 3 times and do at least 3 of the tasks. So you don't have to do them all, but it's just, you're going to do 3 of them, and the roll of the die will tell you which ones you're going to do. So here's write a question, explain, draw, describe. What is something you'd like to investigate more? Write a short poem or haiku. So we'd roll the dice, and it's called on a roll. And you can do that with anything. So write 6 prompts down that might help with active processing. Tell kids they need to do a spinner or roll the dice. If you want to have more control over it, you can roll the dice and show them on the camera what it came up, and everybody does that. But the one thing the kids love about that is, you mean we don't have to do them all? No, it's going to be chance whether it's one of the harder ones or not. So things with dice. And then I buy these little 1-minute or 2-minute timers at Dollar Store, and especially for kids with attentional challenges. And this is even older kids. I might say to them, look, I have some 3-minute timers as well. You need to stick with that for 3 minutes before you ask another question. Or remember, we want to encourage productive struggle. And so you have some kids that are always coming up and doing, Mrs. K, I don't have a pen, Mrs. K, I'm not sure what, Mrs. K. And so really here's the timer, stick with it, see if you can figure it out for yourself in this amount of time. All right. Well, we're all familiar with math style manipulatives and comfortable with that. But some people, especially in science, have gotten very creative. Look at this one. Now that would be fun to do, and that could be a good at-home one, is could you do the phases of the moon using an Oreo cookie? And so I don't always promote using food to do that, but that would be something that kids could do, snap a picture of it, upload it, and be able to show you how they were processing. And remember, that's that application where we're taking our knowledge and putting it into another format. I have several things. I'll just get them here. It's light dice, but I purchased a while back these giant cubes that have pockets in them. I got them on Amazon, and so by putting the pockets in them, then when you roll them, whatever comes up, that could be a task that you have to do, or a vocabulary word that you have to say the definition for, or something. So again, it's just on a roll, but with a dice that has different words that you can put in, or tasks that you could put in, and they're fun to roll. And I have I guess I didn't bring my exercise ones. I have the exercise dice also, that when we need to do something, and again, this can be on a remote class, is that I'll roll the first one. It says we're going to do sit-ups. And the other dice, oh, I think we do have them here. No. The other die then shows whether it's 2, 4, 6, or 8. And so a quick way to get us up and moving using the exercise dice or instructional cubes. Okay, I showed you those. All right. Another aspect here is including more games and mini competitions. Now, the key there is the red part that's underlined, is that if you do turn the learning into a little game or a mini competition, and you saw that Kay Tolliver had several things where her teams were kind of competing. In fact, one of the students even says, I like to compete. The key that Marzano's work really emphasizes is to try to avoid points and prizes, especially cumulative. That really starts to take away the whole joy of having a little competition. So in my classroom, I'm not sure how it happened years ago, I inherited my grandmother's bowling trophies. And so on the shelf in my classroom, and I did it in middle school as well, that I had these bowling trophies. And if a team or a person ever achieve something really fast, so maybe it was a 1 minute right, maybe it was beat the clock, or a game show format that we were doing, I'd just go and get the trophy, and I'd put it on their desk, and I'd say, congratulations, you just won Ruth Riley's perfect score 1963 at Albany Lanes. And the kids would pick it up and yay, yay. And remember, it's okay to celebrate and acknowledge, but it would be put back on the shelf at the end. And so in that way, it was inconsequential. It was acknowledgement and celebration, but didn't go over the top. It didn't have cumulative points, etc. Here's just a couple. This is with the younger kids. They wrote their own little T-chart here, and they're doing prediction. So the job here is, we call this the claw machine. Remember where the claw comes out and you put the quarter in and it goes down and picks something up and brings it up. So these are claw machines. And they were supposed to estimate first and take a guess as to how many of the counting cubes they could get in one fist. So on their charts there, and I think you can see that maybe this view is better, on one half there it shows a little think bubble, and they were supposed to put it down what they thought. Then they would go and they'd make all the sounds and go down and pick up, and then count those out and write the number. And then we could do stuff with, are you always estimating more or less than what you are actually getting? And then they started riffing on it. And so what about if we had two hands? Could we go for that? What if we had gloves on? Would that help? They had all kinds of different ideas. So again, little mini competitions, but really inconsequential rewards. If you haven't already really explored some of these different games, I just so encourage you to think about it. And you know, there's the research there, again from Marzano, shows that using academic games in the classroom is on a regular basis, and games that help teach and reinforce our multiple rehearsals of what you're trying to learn, that there can be up to a 20 percentile point gain in student achievement. And there are so many different games now that we can play that have technology as a part to them. But I did want to point out, I gave you the link there, that there's some great Jeopardy. I don't think I put one in here, but there's some great Jeopardy and Hollywood Squares, and there's different Wheel of Fortune. There's different game show formats that you can get as PowerPoint. Now, if you're not into doing all of that kind of PowerPoint thing, then I want to encourage you to do something with either whiteboards, or these are my little paddles here. And so I can play Jeopardy just with this. So what's a part of speech that names a person, place, thing, or idea? And you write down what it is and hold it up to the camera and let me know. And we'd all whoop and holler if you got it right. So we can do start thinking about Jeopardy style questions. By the way, don't you write all of those. One of the best tasks around is having students design Jeopardy questions that will be on Friday's Jeopardy game. So, and have them even rank whether they think it's a $100 one or a $200 one or $300. And that gets them analyzing about, do I think this is a very simple task or a more challenging task? I'm watching my time here. Good, good. I'm going to throw out a couple of more. These are things that you can certainly still assign for at home. And I'm going to go with the Kay Tolliver model on this. Anytime that you can have kids, this is putting drops on a penny, just with the little dropper or a straw, and counting how many, again, making a prediction, carrying out the scientific method here, then coming up with some conclusions. We added one variable. After we put drops on the penny several times, then we added a little hand sanitizer to the penny, and we found out that it really changed the cohesion, and so it changed things. But then I think I even had kids write about it afterwards. They wrote a conclusion, and they had to show what their how many trials they had as they did it. But it can be with drops on a penny, but think of other things that might be able to be done at home. Again, the write-up is part of it, the collecting data is part of it, and again, there's something to this, having kids experience productive struggle. It absolutely helps build tenacity, grit, and perseverance. This is for the younger years. One that my kids always ask, these are some third graders that second and third graders that I had a couple of years ago, is that we had a scale in the classroom, a hanging scale, and I brought in all these different groceries and canned goods and their recycled shopping bag, and they are running and trying to get exactly enough items to make 3 pounds, and we can change it. It could be 5 pounds, it could be 6 pounds. So if they have a scale available, even a family home scale, could they be doing something where they're finding things in the house that weigh a certain amount and are coming back and then having to adjust? This is just a little film clip of these kids.
I'm not putting back my yummy bar.
Toby, do you have to get more things? Hey, do you think you have 3 pounds?
I do.
Do you think you have 3 pounds? Do you think you have 3 pounds?
Yeah.
Okay, you ready to check? Let's go check. Now, it kind of ends here. But those kinds of little quick activities that could be done. All right, I'm going to pause for just a moment. Let's see. And I'm going to ask you to go into breakout groups, because I'd like you, what we've been talking about here a lot is having kids do hands-on activities that may or may not relate exactly to the skill or task that's being currently studied or learned. And to what degree is it powerful to help kids understand this productive struggle and to not rescue them? So when you come back, we'll talk a little bit about choice before we end, but why don't you use this opportunity to chat just a little bit. Are all of these ideas that I've shared with you here today, are half of them useful to you? Are 25% because of the hybrid learning? Are rarely any of them? Can you see some possibilities? So let's go into breakout rooms for just one more time, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about choice before we leave here today. All right? So the discussion is, what do you think about these types of activities, and beneficial, worth doing? All right. So appreciate those of you that have hung in there today. Thank you for your good attention and participation as we explore this. So one of the things that has come up, and it certainly has come up before today for me, and that is
147 is available. 147.
There we go. Thank you. That many of these things, first, I understand we have to think about how they could be adapted for hybrid learning. Heard some really good examples as people were talking about, well, the kid at home could do this, and the person in the classroom could have the Chromebook, or, I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities here. Let's hope, we're hoping that this spring semester will be the last time that we will have to be doing a hybrid remote learning. We don't know that for sure, but I have every faith that by summer we'll be back to being able to do in person, and that very shortly after that, that we'll be able to relieve and reduce some of the safety precautions of plexiglass or distancing or maybe even masks. But what I want to really emphasize is this idea that there are many, many things that kids could be doing even at home that are going to build their sense of engagement, help them practice with productive struggle, and do really some real world things. When I say real world, that little last activity about measuring canned goods, I'm telling you, there's some middle school and high school kids that would fail at that activity at first and have difficulty finding how many items. One of the things the older kids right away found out is that, guess what? Fluid ounces is not the same as ounces in a pound. So they were starting to look on cans to see if that's what it was, and we're starting to apply. So just even things like the shopping, the weight of things, all of that are tasks that can be done at home. And don't think that it's too young to be doing it, because, or excuse me, too old to be doing it. Because we are finding that there's a whole lot of kids that had gaps even before COVID. They had learning gaps. We have kids that have been play deprived. They haven't played outside. They haven't built a fort. They haven't. They don't have a parent around who helped them learn how to hammer stuff. They, you know, a whole lot of kids are missing some of these skills. And anything that you could integrate into the learning that could involve just regular household things. I've had kids make a bed and take a picture of it and show that they made a bed. I had pictures of kids showing how, or a little video on how to run the washer machine. And so just think outside the box a little bit here about it. And it may not directly address a standard that you're working on, but it will help with engagement and perseverance and all of that. So comments that came in your group there, anybody care to comment on anything that came up in your group? Just go ahead and unmute and join in.
We talked about how a lot of times small group activities that you've been kind of talking about the same type of activities kind of get a bad rap in some places because they don't believe it's rigorous when actually it's providing the rigor needed for the kids to really build on their foundation and understand better than they would any other way. So just appreciated that.
Right, thank you. That, and also we know that sometimes hands-on and some of these fun activities look a little too frivolous. So if someone came through to do a walkthrough and it looked like all you were doing was playing with raisins, that it could be thought of as not as you said, a rigorous academic task. Anybody else comment about what we have been doing? All right, well, let me finish up with our last piece, and that has to do with choice. I'm going to just do a short piece on it because my understanding is that you have been emphasizing and may do and use choice opportunities frequently. So the first here in choice is that there's 3 major kinds. There's just simple choices, where you sit, whether you're going to handwrite this or type it, or who you work with, or which writing prompt you want to do. So simple choices are first. Then we get into what we call must-dos and may-dos, is where part of assignment is non-negotiable, but then some parts of it have a choice of tasks. And sometimes it may even be in stations or workshops where some of them are assigned, and then you have time for student selection. So must-dos and may-dos. And the joke is that you must do a must-do and you must do a may-do, right? And then, of course, especially in the upper grades, we can start getting into show what you know. So could kids have 2 or 3 different ways that they could demonstrate their understanding or show their product or performance? And so it could be a Flipgrid video, it could be creating a PowerPoint presentation, it could be serenading us in song, but where kids might have some choice to be able to show what they know. Now, the key here about choice is that choice triggers motivation. When I feel like I get to choose, I'm much more likely to lean in and listen to what the choices are. But when I am dictated to and always told what to do, especially those kids who resist that, I may not be hooked enough to join in and engage. So even a choice between 2 things. So here's an example. It's younger years, but you can go with the type of example. So just have a choice between 2 things. Choice A is, we've been studying about bees. Choice A is that you're going to complete an online web quest and you need to research the bee waggle dance. And I'm suggesting that you use the NOVA online program called Tales from the Hive, Dance with Bees site. And that'll be bookmarked on our class computers. And there'll be a little worksheet or a little question prompt for you to respond to after you've watched that. If you choose A, that's going to be an OYO activity. You're going to work on your own. The other choice on this is choice B, where you do get to work with another student to research the bee waggle dance, but you're going to use 2 different books that we have in the classroom or available to us, or online, as the case may be. One would be maybe the science textbook, and another would be the copy of Bees Dance and Whales Sing by Marjorie Flackham. And again, you answer the questions. If you do that, it's a woo-woos activity. Work with one other student. So very quickly, and we can just do hands up. That lets me know you're engaged here, and I see most of you here. If you're going to choose between A and B here. So if you would be more likely in my class to choose A, will you raise your hand and leave it up for a minute? If you would be more likely to choose A, working on your own online. 4, 5, 6. Okay. Hands down. If you would be more likely to choose B in my class, raise your hand. I don't have everybody on the screen, but it looks like about the same amount, maybe a few more for B. It doesn't matter to me. They still have the same questions, but by having that choice, I'm going to get much better engagement, which actually is going to result in much better behavior as well. So here are some of the things to keep in mind. We seek and choose. Remember, our brain is always seeking. We seek and choose tasks that appeal to our learning preferences. So even if we don't know the names of our multiple intelligences, we know what kinds of things we're attracted to. Sometimes we choose things that reminds us of our past successes. Maybe you've heard kids say, oh, we did this last year. This is fun. I want to do that thing because I've done it before. I know how to do it. We also tend to choose things that we know are within our realm of possibilities. So I think I can do this. This seems possible. Some kids simply choose which one looks like it might be more fun. Others are going to choose which activity is going to let me get up and move. And others are going to choose, do I get to work with another or can I work on my own? All right. So as we talk today about instructional variety, the big key part is how to vary the process, how to do active processing. So we need to include a variety of elaborative rehearsals, stretched out over time. We need to create activities that are going to incorporate aspect of those learning preferences, the modalities, the multiple intelligences. One that tends to often get forgotten is the kinesthetic learner. And so we need to always keep double checking. Have I done something for my kinesthetic learners? We have really so many options now with our technology resources for processing. And so it may be programs that your district or school already owns. It may be other resources, everything from the leveled text to other things that might help. And then in all of that, include various frequent reflection activities. Now, I'm going to come back to that in just a moment, but before I do, I'd like you to fill out an exit card. You're not going to turn it in unless you care to put it up on chat. I am going to ask for a few people to respond, though. So a classic exit card here is, what are 3 things that you learned today? 2 things that you found interesting? And what's 1 question that you still have? I'm going to give you about 2 minutes there to chat about and write down and capture what are some of those. Certainly encourage you to do this with the staff, have them give you some feedback, bring some little 3x5 cards, ask them to give you an exit card. I always kind of tease and say that's your ticket out of here. About 30 seconds more.
Our in-service will be virtual too, though.
Yes. Well, and yes. Well, they can post it, though. I do a lot with Padlet, where it's like a little Post-it on a thing, so you could have done it on Padlet. But thank you for reminding me. We're just doing it random here, and so I'd love to hear from someone. What are some things you've learned today? You don't have to say all 3, say at least 1 or 2. I would love in these 5 minutes to hear a little something, hear a voice of every single person. So what are some things that were learned today? Go for it. And you don't have to say all 3, you can just say one of your 3.
I just want to say, this is Mr. Nadoze. I just want to say that I learned a lot about the multiple intelligences. I have found myself using probably different terms that are most likely inappropriate, such as degree of intelligence, things like that, or maybe even learning styles. So yeah, having that insight on multiple intelligences really shed a lot of light into how I might approach my class going forward. Of course, marrying multiple intelligences with Bloom's taxonomy, especially during assessments, is just a big deal for me. In fact, that I'm going to modify right away when I get back to class.
Great. Thank you. Somebody else, things you learned today. Let's stick with the first one. Things you learned today. I'd love to hear from a couple of more people.
I love the fact that we get to graph them so that there's a real visual of, how our kids learn and the way they process. And I think that is going to go a long way.
Great. Can I tell you something kind of interesting? I do a lot of multi-age classes, and for several years, I had kids, in some cases, for 3 years in a row. That got a little too much, but you know what I'm saying. Having kids more than 1 year can be really great. And so it was interesting compared to the first time they took the little assessment on multiple intelligences, and 2 years later, when they took it as they exited, honestly, almost all of their bars were up really, really high. Why is that? Because they started acknowledging, number one, they had language for it, but they realized that they were willing to try different things. Because we would say in class, you know what, if you give this a go, you are really going to be developing your musical intelligence. And so there was this sense of give it a go. And the kids said, yeah, we have so many opportunities to try all these different things. We've just developed all of our multiple intelligences. So even if they hadn't all the way, that feeling that they did was certainly great. Somebody else, what's something you learned today?
I learned how to make an eight-page book.
A booklet, yay!
And it fits in my pocket.
That's
and
right.
I can just bring it out and utilize it.
You know, if you're not familiar a lot with foldables, Dinah, maybe some of you know Dinah.
Dinah Zyke.
Dinah Zyke.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks. She has foldables, but just even Google foldables, because again, it's a gimmick. And as long as kids have paper at home, it is something that you can do with them remotely as well. And it's a gimmick, but it works. One more thing on things you learned today. One more. Somebody else?
I learned today that we don't use 8 kinds of SMART enough in the classroom with our teachers. So I know that we'll be implementing, I know I'll be touching base with our teachers about that a little bit more.
Thank you. Well done. And anybody else care to share on the second one there of something that you just found interesting? It doesn't have to be that you learned it, but you thought it was interesting. Anybody care to share?
I'll share. I don't remember exactly how it goes, but something about they need 24 times or practices to achieve 80% mastery. I found that very interesting.
Yeah, kind of frightening, but yeah. Not all kids. We do know that some will get it just after a couple of practices, but an average, that's without any learning challenges, might still need to process it 24 times. When I say process it, make sure you get, though, that it could be teacher talking about it, watching a video about it, doing it. So every time you bring it to consciousness, that is some active processing. Anybody else something interesting?
I found interesting the relation between hand gestures and learning, right? So stimulating the brain to make them understand what you're teaching them with hand gestures. That was pretty cool.
Right. Excellent. Thank you. And for those of you that do know some sign language or something, it's not uncommon to go ahead and put a sign language gesture in with something and to help remember. And you know what? Even if one child in the classroom remembers it better because you did some kind of a sign, yay, right? It's just one more little, if you will, a gimmick. All right. And what are some questions that you still have? I'd love to hear from just a couple of people. What questions do you still have? And then we're finished. What's a burning question besides yeah, but, or can we really do this during COVID?
Mr. Nadozi, one more time. Going back to when you started, you had this flow chart on attention, motivation, engagement, and learning. One burning question is that all the steps? Could there be more? For example, I'm thinking attention. Could there be something preceding attention? Some of those environmental factors that might affect student everything, student attention, student learning. I was wondering if there could be something preceding attention. I'm also thinking in terms of self-efficacy and empowerment, and how do these fit into that flow?
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I won't take time to answer all of these questions right now. It's interesting about the idea of something before attention. So there can be awareness or intuition, but attention is really when your brain is triggering your visual or your auditory to reorient, to look at something or to pay attention. Yeah. One more burning question. All right, you guys have just been terrific. Let's just look here really quickly. So in this increased engagement in the classroom with differentiation, do smaller bursts with limited information, chunk it. And remember, upper grade teachers, we spoke about, stop talking so much, intersperse it with more activities. Anything that you can do that makes it a little bit unpredictable through variety and novelty. We don't want unpredictable where kids are on edge and nervous and anxious, but we want unpredictable where they get a little surprised and a little smile because something comes up that is novel or has a lot of variety. Use more visuals and non-linguistic representations, and it could even be audio cues as well. And the most important thing here, that really, if we want to do active processing to increase engagement, is it needs to generate an action to do something, to do something and put it into action and use some of those higher level thinking skills. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do, as I've done on the other days, is I'm going to take the a PowerPoint here, spiff it up a little bit. I'll put the links to the video clips. I think I have links to all of them. And I'll pass those over to you. And you only have a 3-hour session to do, but certainly sticking with a big emphasis on both multiple intelligences and Bloom's taxonomy would be a great way to start. All right.
Thank you so much, Martha. Just again, as a reminder, as Martha was saying, we are going to re-deliver this on February 15th. You as TOTs will deliver to your own campus. And again, it's up to the principal's discretion if you want to start from 8 and go from 8 to 11 or 8:30 to 11:30. That's up to your principals. We will be having Eduphoria sessions will be created by Fran, who is my clerk. And then also electronic sign-in sheets will be created as well, and they will all be posted on the district website where you can find PD. Is there anyone that that I need to show quickly where that is, where you can find that information? Because if you're, depending on where you are in the district, please stay on and I can show anyone that doesn't know where to find that information on the website. I can show you. Okay. If there's no other questions, everyone signed in, we should be good there. And you'll get credited for this in Eduphoria. So again, if you don't know where to find all of the professional development information on the website, stay on so that I can show you.
I just want to share
the slide presentation.
The slide presentation, I go home tonight and we'll tweak it a little bit, pitch out some slides, fix it up for you, and I'll send it back to Bonnie. She's going to put it in the folder on the drive, and that'll be available. Have they been helpful before? Have you been using those and it's worked?
Absolutely.
Okay, good job.
Yeah, and then also this videotape, this session has been videotaped, and I will place that into the folder as well. So again, if you don't have access to the folder, let me know that as well, and I can get to that. It's going to be very hard to email that. Oh, Dale always gives it in a link that you can go to, so that will be emailed to you. So we'll make sure that you get all the rest of the materials that you need. Great. All right. Anything else from you, Martha?
Yes. Well, I just want to say I so appreciate anytime I can work with a group, even if it's remotely, for more than one. So much of my work, as you can imagine, is coming in doing a one-day PD, and it's just not as satisfying because I don't get to follow up with you and progress with you. So I so appreciate that. I so wish you well for the rest of this very unpredictable, unprecedented is our new favorite word, right? Spring. And I hope if your feedback is good, then we're going to arrange some more sessions for next year. So wish you all well. Thank you so much. Thanks for your good efforts, and keep it up. Have a great one.
Okay, for those of you that are staying behind to see where that is, you need to go to the Southwest ISD website.